Welcome everyone to another episode of Vision and Light, and we have a familiar face returning for his second bout of torture. Hi, TJ Thorne. How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. Just you got me up in the middle of the night at 9 a.m. to record this, dealing with my coffee and that side of things. But yeah, doing pretty good.
Well,
How about you?
I'd rather. I'm great. I'm great. It's the other end of the day for me. It's nearly dinner time, so but let's keep this quick, because I need my calories as normal. Nice to see you caffeinated. You're looking surprisingly awake for 9 a.m.
Yeah, that's I woke up a little bit earlier than that, but
It's always
I'm
good to
usually
have a
sleeping
plan.
till I'm usually sleeping till 9. So
Yeah, I wish I could.
mm,
Us old guys don't do so well on that.
just stay up late. Go to
I'll
sleep till
just stay
9.
up later. Yeah, that's the plan. So, right, with these vision and light things in the past, we've generally been talking about creativity in general, and what it means to be a photographer and why we make photographs. And if you haven't watched TJ's earlier interview, I would suggest you do. That will be pinned up there for anybody who wants to check it. That's good. I've got really good at that now.
Got it.
But obviously, there are some interesting things afoot for both TJ and myself. Many of you know that I have got my new book coming out, Out of Darkness, and that's very exciting. But TJ has also got a book coming out, and it is what we're going to talk about primarily this afternoon. So, TJ, tell us about this book that you've been working on and what it's all about and why it's important.
Sure. So the book is titled Ebb and Flow, and it comprises of 100 abstract photos of water, and that is something that I've been kind of really focusing on over the past couple of years, but keeping it for the most part to myself, because I've discovered that everything that I need out of photographing nature in order to like basically survive this world, I can find in photographing water. And so it's become like this really important meditative emotional process for me, where when I need an escape from the world or from my problems, I go to water and I look through my viewfinder. I get lost in my viewfinder. Nothing else in the world exists. It's just me and gratitude and peace and serenity. And I just, unintended, but also not intended, I just pour myself into it. And it's the it's it's nothing exist like none of my problems exist when I'm doing that. So it's become this really personal project for me, and I've always wanted to present it as a body of work in a book. It's been really important to me, but I've never had an opportunity to do so until now. So I'm excited. I think there's a lot that I've learned about myself in photographing water, and have derived inspiration and strength from. The title Ebb and Flow uh, makes me think about just life and life in general, and how you do have periods of ebbs and periods of flows. So whenever I am in those ebbs, I know that as long as I keep doing what I need to do, and keep focused and be patient, that eventually the flows will come. Um, so that's the basis of the book and the title. And yeah, I'm nervous to get all this work out there, but I'm also really excited. Um,
I think it's really curious actually, because what the similarity with our books in many ways is that they're a focus or an externalization of inner turmoil. My book Out of Darkness is pretty much, we're covering the same emotional territory. We're serving both bodies of work are, they're serving the same need for us, which is an externalization and an external focus to stop ourselves agonizing over thoughts and all of those types of things. And that's one of the things about photography that's so important, is it gives you something else to focus on for an hour or 2 hours or however long you have to go out into the field. The big difference with our work is that yours are static images of fluid things and mine are static images of primarily static things. You've got this beautiful energy in your images that, I mean, obviously the energy in mine is very different from the energy of yours. There's so much serendipity in your work. You know, that the image that's behind you, I believe, is the cover of your book. And it's just fascinating to look at. You know, it's just like calligraphy or hidden messages, or, you know, but my big thing is luminosity and contrast and color and atmosphere and geometry, and all of your work embodies that in buckets. What is it about the process of that switching off the inner monologue to focus on this play of light and shadow? Because that seems to be like the number one therapy for you.
Yeah.
You know, and from a business point of view, there's a whole bunch of stuff comes into it that's very much the counterpart of that, which is planning, marketing, and social media. And that's very much the kind of antithesis of everything that you want from being out there as a photographer. But I just think the images are so beautiful and so aesthetically beautiful. You know, what is it about that process that just is so good for you?
You know, obviously, you know, most of our body is comprised of water, and water is just a very calming force. It's, you know, it is the force of nature. We can't live without it. I just can't live without it in a different way. You know, and I think the appeal, aside from what I get out of it emotionally, is that it just presents itself in so many different ways, right? You know, there's just, I can stand in one spot, and without moving my feet, I can get a variety, you know, a variety of different shots, based on what's reflecting, where the light's hitting, how the water is moving. So it's just very dynamic, and it's easy to get lost in without even moving your feet. So I can stand in one spot for literally, I've stood in one spot for over an hour or two and photographed the same little piece of water. But it's just, even, you know, a foot from one spot to another can be completely different.
Right.
So it's just kind of like, it enables me to get into my viewfinder. And I need the viewfinder. I think I might have said this in my last one, like how, like, you know, when I have that little box and it's its own little private world. And when I get in there, it's like, you know, I'm able to build the relationships with the subjects that I need. And, you know, water can, like, just like I said, the dynamicism of water and how it can move fast, it can move slow, it can crash, it can trickle, it can ebb, it can flow, it can you know, reflect sunlight, it can reflect trees, it can, you know, be pierced by the sunlight and have refracted, it can be aerated. There's just so many different varieties, and it's basically an infinite playground where I can lose myself and, again, just get everything that I need out of it. You know, one of the things that I think about the most with water is that it's always, no matter what it's doing, it's always trying to find peace in equilibrium, you know, and right. I see myself in that. You know, that's a very powerful thing to me, because, you know, I deal with mental health issues on a daily basis. So, you know, knowing that I can find a commonality in that and draw inspiration from that is pretty important to me. So, you know, what I get out of it is basically that, you know, it's everything that I need to survive in this world. It's that peace, serenity. I'm able to find those moments of gratitude where, you know, not a lot of people have the opportunity to escape to somewhere pretty and look through an expensive piece of equipment. And not only that, but, like, you know, make that their life's work, and find a connection to it. So there's a lot of gratitude that goes into finding that peace and serenity, and gratitude is a huge part of my life, and something that is really important to me in order to keep going.
Yeah, well, you know, and I think that comes across in everything that you do, to be fair. You know, is that, you know, you're an incredibly humble person, and but everyone loves you. That's something that everyone I speak to anyway, but I only speak to nice people. So
I think, you know, it's you know, and thank you for the compliment. You know, that might be true. I think just water is the epitome of it. and it's also just abundantly available. I can literally go out right now. It's, winter in the Pacific Northwest. I can go out to the street and find a puddle, and can I make, the greatest photo ever? And will I be in that mental state where that I need to? No, because, be dodging cars. But the point is like, it's everywhere. I
Right.
don't need to go to the ends of the earth, or,
Right.
somewhere extremely and, visually, photographically inspiring or beautiful in order to find something to engage with, and being
Yeah.
able to find beauty um, all around me is huge. Like I need that. I need to be reminded that there is beauty in this world everywhere if you pay attention.
Right.
It's just water is the epitome of that.
Right.
So
I think I remember reading once about photography that it's easy to make the dramatic and the extraordinary, the to make them look extraordinary is not that difficult. A lot of people manage to make the extraordinary look quite ordinary, but to make the ordinary look extraordinary is something that I think takes art. I think that's where art comes into our life, and creativity and expression comes into our life. And I think that's the beauty of the work. Particularly, I mean, this image that's behind your head, I can't stop looking at it because it's just light on water, and it's the same in my book. It's just sand at the end of the day. It's not like,
dirt.
yeah, yours is the most common liquid on earth and mine's the most common solid. So it truly is, we're using the world's most abundant raw ingredients really to make these photographs. So obviously I understand very much your relationship with water, just as my relationship with sand. It's and water, of course. Where I live in the west of Scotland, it's a pretty damp place also. In fact, I was out shooting water this morning, or ice rather than water. But the transition to turn this body of work, which is quite I've been aware of this body of work for quite a few years now. I mean, it's a major part of your identity, I think, is your water work. And the decision to turn that into a book, at what point did that really, because you have to want to make a book,
Right.
it's not something we do lightly. You really have to want to make a book. That's the one thing I've really learned out of this process is, if you think about doing it for the money, you're delusional. You have to really want a book out there. And so do you remember when that moment was? Did it happen gradually, or was it more like an epiphany? Or
So when I noticed, it was 2017 when I noticed that like I had a thing for water. And then like as I, kind of moved forward, the future, or the past was, I found more revealing things from before that time, where, I'm like, wow, like, I remember the first time that I saw, light on water, like distinctly. Like it's very, but like I didn't know what was there at that time. I just knew that I liked it, and I took pictures of it, and they're terrible. Um, but I kept engaging with it because it was just something that was compelling me to point my camera at it. It was just drawing me in. But I remember I was on a private workshop in the Columbia River Gorge, and the client was photographing. I was just sitting on a rock, and I was watching the water just kind of like that was coming down the creek, lap up onto a rock, and I could see the reflections. And I'm like, and I started shooting it, and then I, in that moment, because this was also after another kind of like epiphany that I had about my work when I was in Southern Utah, about how I'm more drawn to intimate plays of light and intimate moments and things like that. Um, but I was still trying to force everything into a wide angle because that was like the style back then, right? I didn't necessarily know my creative identity. But when on that trip to Utah, I was like, wow, these are the things that I like. So I should kind of um, point my lens at these things a little bit more. So coming back from that, and this was just a couple of days later after that we got back from that trip, I did this private workshop, and that was the point where I was like, there's something here. There's something here. And I started exploring that. And it's taken me a couple of years to kind of, discover how to photograph water and what works and what doesn't work. And, to go through the process of, learning what it all means and kind of looking deep into it and reviewing the past and noticing that it's always kind of been a thing ever since at least 2011 or 2012. I can't remember the specific year, but when I decided that it was going to become a book, I can't specifically remember, but 2017 was kind of when I started pouring myself into it, and since then it's just become a huge part of my creative identity that I've had, for the most part hidden. I've been, in the past year or so, I've been showing a lot more of my waterwork and stuff, but before that I was like, I'm not gonna show anyone. Still, when you go to my website, you're not going to find a lot of it. It's mostly all in the book. And even beyond that, we think about water and photographing it, and at some point when I've been photographing water for seriously and dedicating my creative vision to it for a lot of parts for a couple of years now. And at some point you kind of get it, what to expect. You see the same situations, or water and light interacting the same way. The photos obviously are going to be a little bit different, but the basis of them, where there's refracted light or reflected and direct, all that kind of stuff, that's all going to be the same. So there comes a lot of good puns here, but there comes a saturation point where you're like, you kind of know what to expect, and it's kind of lost its it loses its creative invigoration. So the process is still really important. The images are still really important, but like that invigoration of discovery is kind of lost, because you kind of know what you're going to get.
I get that.
So you then you get to this point where like, okay, well, what can I do differently, or how can I interact with this differently? And then you start digging into your creative tool bag. And now, like, I'm like, even just like, a month or two ago, I've discovered a new way to engage with it that I'm really excited about. So, I've been photographing for 20 some years, and I'm still with this common subject that I feel like I've tapped all the ends of. Like, I'm still discovering new ways to interact with it. And so there is creative invigoration to be found. And to me, that's just really important to, grow as a person and grow as a photographer and a creative. And
I think, this is something I talk an awful lot about on the channel and in my own books and on the forum and so forth, which is that as we develop, then our entire relationship with our creativity is going to develop and change. And it's about flow. It's about, going up the upslope and coming down the downslope. I mean, I think all of us have experienced those. People call them a creative slump or a plateau or something like that. But most of it is we're just not in that space in that time. We just don't have the motivation or the drive to be playful or to experiment or to explore or to be surprised. And I think, that it's always us that's the variable. It's always us that's going to go into the landscape and dictate the type of experience we're going to have. I went out this morning with a new camera system, and it was a very different dude walking into the landscape this morning than it was the guy who went out yesterday. Just because I had a different toy, a different tool to play with, that just gave very different results.
But also kind of, I recently, or not recently, feels recently, still, because, but I switched systems, and, there is a fluency that you reach with your tool where it feels like you're playing an instrument, right? So when you have all the muscle memory down, it's just like you don't have to think about anything.
Every button,
right? You're just you can pour yourself into your process, and you're not thinking about your tool. But when you switch systems, you're like, okay, like you're so much into the technological, the gear itself, that you're not able to focus on the.
It was really weird. It's the first time in quite a long time I felt like such a noob. It was great. I really enjoyed it. I just embraced my own ineptitude. It was so much fun.
And I think that's important to my process. Is feeling that invigoration and like that discovery, right? There's it's easy to just kind of go out and keep doing the same things over and over again. And, especially as a business, like, having that hit rate, that high hit rate of like, you're going to go out, you're going to get images, like, there's value in that. But the real value to me is, 90% of the time that I'm pushing the shutter button, it's practice. It's like discovery, it's
Right.
it's experimentation, it's what if I did this and what if I did this, and so there's I think a lot of people that I talk to don't have that. Every time they push the shutter, it's like it's to get a photo, a
Yeah.
potential photo to make it into their portfolio,
Yeah.
which is fine. But for it's just not for me. I really enjoy the act of discovery, and that's what photography gives me. It gets me to see the world in a new way. Like like this behind me, that's not something like that I you can just see, right?
Right.
And my photography is for me. But if you were to ask me like, what do you want people who view your work to get out of it, it would be to kind of like realize that there's beauty all around you, and
Right.
that even in a puddle of water on the street, there's something there. And I had somebody who was featuring me for this website about the Ebb and Flow collection. She sent me an aside afterwards, and she's like, just so you know, like ever since I've seen your work, I look at water differently. I
Right.
used to go to this creek with my dog, and my dog has since passed. And now when I go to that creek, I look at the water, and that's like the best compliment I can get about my
Absolutely.
work, is that it enriched somebody's life enough for them to carry that with them, and to realize that there is more to nature and more beauty in the world than you think. I can go to the grocery store parking lot and find something to photograph.
Right.
There's beauty everywhere, as
Yeah.
long as you just kind of keep your heart open and let it come to you.
100%. Yeah, we agree on that. We should be friends.
We should be.
We should be
Can
friends.
I get your number?
Yeah, I'll text you.
Right.
I'll call you afterwards. Right. So this book, what have you now? I know that you've gone down the route of going with someone who comes highly regarded in the US for making books. I believe Eric Bennett.
Eric Bennett used him in the first NLPA book.
Yeah.
Which I know it had its challenges because of COVID and
Yeah.
things outside of his name is Jerry Greer.
Yeah.
Mountain Trail Press is the brokerage, and then he's starting up a publishing company
Right.
called I don't I gotta admit I don't know how it's exactly pronounced, but it's Platanus Platanus editions. He also did Andrew Baruthy's book Heal. But yeah, he's a very, very well respected guy in the industry. He's been doing this for a while. He has great relationships with the print house in South Korea. And he's just been a huge help. I was like a deer in headlights doing this. I'm like, I just emailed him like, I want to do a book. And he like just kind of like laid everything out. Really nice guy, really generous. So really, really honored that he decided to actually publish this book and not just kind of deal with the brokerage. And he's excited about the work, and that's important to me. So yeah, it's I'm excited. It's going to be a high quality book, cloth bound cover, tip on image, kind of like how you have with yours. And yeah, it's I'm at the point now where I'm just I have this is all I have of the book right now. We're just unbound pages.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to kind of like feel a finished product in my hands, because it's been a long process, and you know how it goes. And there's a lot of there's a wide range of emotions that you go through when making a book. Excitement, confidence,
Fear.
opposite of confidence, if you're uncertainty, so it's been a long process, and I'm looking forward to finally getting it in my hands. So I'm doing pre-sales right now for a little bit of a discounted price.
Cool.
Probably
Have you got a timeline for that? When do you think you're going to be receiving?
Once the books, well, I don't want to do not pre-sales and not be able to ship the books. So basically, like once they are halfway across the ocean, I'll probably pull pre-sales and start charging the regular price.
Right.
So yeah, it's been a long time coming, and I'm looking forward to finally seeing a finished product and holding it and smelling it and seeing 2 pallets of books sitting in the middle of my living room.
Yeah, ours has just arrived. So we we had 5 pallets of books arrived. So yes, it's great that they're finally here, but now we need to just get them moving out to people. So we have a
I'm looking forward to getting mine.
Yes. I'm trying to think of something offensive to say.
Can't say anything. Yeah, no, it's yeah, it's like I said, it's a lot to put in. There's a lot of vulnerability that comes into it, you know. I like this is the most important work that I've ever created. But it's just the beginning of my journey, you know, like
Right.
in the time that I've put this book together, like I said, I've been making new and different water work. So like I basically already have a second edition ready to go, or the images for it. But you know, it's there's a lot of vulnerability that goes into it, right. And you know, I'm grateful that people are willing to kind of, you know, support this whole process that I'm going through, and you know, I'm looking forward to continuing this journey and right. learning more about water and new ways to interact with it and new ways about myself. You know, this isn't just you know, I think you could tell by now that this isn't just, you know, this kind of one-off book that I'm doing. Like this, I know that this is going to be part of my creative journey for probably the rest of my life. I mean, I have the, you know, yeah, I'm not joking around here. This is important to me. This is like, this is what I need.
God, now I feel really shallow now.
No, you just got to get light and dark on your hands.
I'll get out of darkness somewhere.
Yeah, there you go.
So, no, yeah. Am I correct in saying that William Neal?
Yep, William Neal. He's been a godsend to me. He's such a good guy. He wrote the foreword for my book,
and mine,
and yours. And one of my best friends, Alex Noriega, wrote a nice little passage that we're calling "Words from a Friend," where he goes into a little bit about me and my work with it. And then somebody that's been very important to my creative journey, my friend Tula Top, who isn't so much, he doesn't post a lot of images on social media anymore. But back when I first started, he was very supportive. We went out a lot together. You know, I was going through a lot, trying to make ends meet as a single father, you know, working in the restaurant industry. As he was always driving, and just a really supportive, really good guy. And then when I finally decided to make the jump into full-time photography, he gave me a no strings attached seed egg, basically like a little financial egg to kind of be able to get my permits and get my licenses and do my first workshop. And it took me a few years to pay him back, which I didn't have to, but it was important to me to not have that, you know, that debt, and to show him my gratitude by repaying him. He wrote the afterword. Nice. And it's just like, yeah, it really hit pretty hard to see the things that they wrote about me and my work. And I'm grateful for all three of them for taking a part, and it was yeah, it's I don't feel I don't feel deserving.
Don't be daft.
But
you know,
that's
well, you wouldn't be you if you didn't say that, to be fair.
I guess so. But yeah,
I mean, you know, it's always difficult to hear stuff when people say nice things about you. I mean, you know, that's part of our business, is that our goal, I believe, is to try and help other people have better relationships with themselves and their creativity and their expression. I mean, that's why I work. You know, it's just that, well, it works for me, maybe it'll work for you. You know, that's pretty much why I do it.
Yeah.
You know, it works for me, and maybe it'll work for you. And I think you and I share that. And you know, because that's the reason for it, of course we feel odd when people say nice things about that journey or that motivation to do so. And yes, you know, we make a living and we make money and we can afford to buy cameras and tripods and travel, and you know, of course we make a living, you know, just as you did when you were a chef, and just when I did when I worked in a bank. You know, we do stuff and we make a living, and we shouldn't be ashamed of that either. But one thing that was really true for me was, after I'd written the text, particularly because my text is very much the story of my journey out of depression, and the fact that I'm no longer depressed and I'm no longer a panicky person. And that, if someone had said that to me 6 years ago, I'd have just said, no way. That's not going to happen. I'm going to be on some kind of medication for the rest of my life, because that is who I am. And to come out of that in such a profound way and no longer be that person was shocking to me, truly shocking. And I think the reason I wrote the book was to tell that story, because it was really important. It changed my life, and therefore I felt it was important to try and tell that story to other people. When I wrote the text, I certainly felt, oh my God, is this it? Is this the most profound thing I'm ever going to do? And that's it. I'm finished. I'm never going to be as creative again or as profound again. And that lasted for a little while, I would say. But then I very quickly realized that I got excited about something completely different. And I thought, hey, well, why should it be the end of something? It didn't even feel like closure to me anymore. It just felt like part of the timeline. Is that, and I think the way you've explained your relationship with water, that there's no closure in this book. You're creating a body of work.
This is the beginning.
Right.
Yeah, this is the beginning. Yeah, and it took me a while to write what I wrote for the book. And what I wrote for the book doesn't feel, it's not much different than, the things that I talk about. Because part of me was like, oh, it's a book. It has to have so much writing in it. And I need to get super deep and all this stuff. But at the basis of it, it's like the work is the work. The words, I don't think that I can write much that would elevate the work,
right? If
that makes sense, right? The work is what the book is about. It's not about the words. So I racked myself for a long time. I'm like, is this what I have to say about this work? Is this all I have to say about it? But the fact is that the work is what I have to say. The images are what I have to say. These are records of personally meaningful experiences and much needed serenity in my life. And that's what the work is about. The work is representations of that. So I don't want to put a huge emphasis on words and what I'm saying about it. I just want the work to stand kind of on its own. So in terms of this book, it's a monograph. There's not a lot of text in it. It's 100 photos of deeply personal moments that I spent looking through my viewfinder in moments where I needed to be looking through my viewfinder and I needed to be looking at water. And yeah, this is the beginning of the journey. These images date back to, I think I have an image in there from 2016 or maybe even 2015. I think it was 16 is the oldest one in there. So this is the beginning of it. This is a volume one. This is a journey. There's not going to be closure in this because this is something that is always going to be needed in my life.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I guess, kind of hearing you say, I can relate to writing what you wrote and then feeling a little bit of closure in that. And but for me, it wasn't like that. It was more like, this is the start of what I want to say.
Yeah, I think for me, it was a case of the context was important. The images are quite explicitly from dark to light, in a somewhat understandable path. But it was the relationship that I had with the elements of light and dark that I think was the thing that needed to change. And that's what I admire about the photo that's behind you, is that there's light and dark, and you need both. Yep. If it was all dark or all light, then it's not contrast. There's no journey, there's no geometry, there's no contrast, there's no atmosphere, so it's these elements and the way that those elements interact with each other that create the nuance in our lives. If you're just average the whole time, then you miss the highs, you miss the lows. But equally, if you're low the whole time, you're missing the highs and even the midtones. So there's I think it was my relationship with the tonal values of my life was really, really profound. I think that was the thing that really changed for me. But, you know, I see that in your work. You know, I love your work, as you know, and it's always that honesty about you that's always so endearing. And you know, one of the things I'm finding most common in all my friends, you know, people who are truly my friends, you know, Adam, you, and I'm not going to mention everybody, but, you know, Adam and I have been hanging out quite a lot recently, running workshops together, and you and I are planning to do some workshops together in the future. But my real friends just seem to have no ego. You know, everyone is very humble, everyone is very quiet, everyone's just very relaxed about their relationship with their work. You know, it's just they do it because they have to do it, and that seems to be the common theme. So where can people find this book of yours, apart from in the link down below?
You can navigate to it through my website, but I do have a URL that directs directly to the sales page, ebbandflowmonograph.com. You just head to that, and there are 4 different options. There's a standard edition, which is just the book. There is I'm trying to think of the different tiers. Okay, so silver. There's a silver edition that comes with one single print of an image. I have basically 6 different images that aren't in the book that can be added on as prints. So the silver is 1 print, the gold is 3 prints, and the collector's edition is all 6 prints, and they're all printed on my fancy new large format printer that I had no business buying, but I did. So they're all being printed personally by hand, and that's another thing that I'm really excited about is rebuilding my print business and kind of, you know, taking the whole entire process from capture to output into my own hands. And it's inspiring and invigorating, and I have a newfound passion for it's kind of like it adds a layer of passion that I didn't have with my work before, because selling prints through a lab, you know, there's like this disconnect, there's this latency, there are hurdles and obstacles, and like ordering from a lab and then getting the print and test prints, and but knowing that I can just rip a print off at any time and make sure that it's perfect, and not only that, but it's more in line with who I am as a person, and just very personal. It's a very personal process that's important to me, and I'm very excited about that. So yeah.
Well, of course, I'm going to encourage everyone to buy a copy. You know, it's I think books are. Ann Kristin and I buy a lot of books. You know, we pretty much all our friends are landscape photographers, and many of us have published books, so we just buy all of them. Really, you know, it's just an important part of the process is sitting with a book, because social media is so. The relationship we have with images and social media, first of all, and you know, small screens and you know, flicking past other images and stuff, you know, very few people spend any length of time with an image, and it's kind of it's the missing link, I think, these days is reconnecting. And more people are bringing out books, but more and more people are also buying books again. I think people are beginning to realize the value of owning a book, and the amounts of time and effort and energy and love and passion and tears that goes into making them. You know, so not only are we supporting the artists who are producing these things, but we're gaining something in return. You know, we're gaining something that we can spend time with. And Ann Kristin and I quite regularly sit in an evening with a book, and we'll grab one off the shelf and we'll sit and spend time with the images. And one image can take an evening. And that's the difference between that and social media. So obviously I'm going to encourage everyone to just buy books. I
think, you know, just in this increasingly digital age, we miss a lot of the tactile side of things. You know, I know that was an important part for me in the book and in the prints in general, is just having that tactile side. And, you know, even with the, you know, resurgence of film, you know, film is back, you know, analog is, you know, we all know that's kind of like taking off again, especially with younger crowds. So I think, you know, there's the trendy hip side to it, but there's also like this, like we just live in such a digital world now that, you know, we miss that tactile and that, you know, the mystery and the science and like just the romance of.
Well, you know, we're on a timeline, you know, and as professional photographers, our contribution to art and photography is going to be part of that timeline. You know, the name TJ Thorne is on the timeline of photographers. And it's what we do with our time is kind of important. I mean, I still shoot film. I have a Hasselblad 6x6, which I still shoot on a regular basis. And now I've just got the Fuji medium format. So I've left 35mm photography 100% now. But yeah, I mean, it's such an important time for us to be holding on to the past for the things that were good about art in the past, which were the tactile nature of having a book in your hands. I think I've read my own book 3 times since we've received our first copies. I think I've actually literally sat and read cover to cover three times, just because it's like, I'm in love with it. So I'm looking forward to getting yours.
Yeah, I'm looking, so am I. Yeah, I want to, I'm gonna definitely need to spend like some really personal time with the finished product, and I'm really looking forward to that. All of the highs and the lows of producing this book are going to come down to just it being in my hands, and I know that's going to be a really emotional process. Once we load all the books off the truck and get them in here, and I crack open that first that piece of tape and pull one out, I know it's going to be a pretty emotional thing. So
it is
really looking forward to that. So it should be another month, I think, maybe before. So we'll see.
Okay. So folks have got time. Folks have got time to order one at the pre-sale price.
For the next couple of weeks, it'll be pre-sale prices, and then we'll see. I mean, I have a busy beginning of April, so whenever I get them and ship them out is still kind of up in the air, and has a lot to do with when they are put on a boat and shipped across the ocean to begin with. So
yeah,
we'll go from there. So yeah, the estimated ship date is sometime in April.
Okay, great. I'm looking forward to that.
Me too.
You better say something nice in mine.
I'm saying, no. I told, so before we started recording, I was telling you how I look at yours, and I'm like, man, wish mine looked like that. It's going to be a beautiful book. That red that you went with is impactful. Mine's a little bit more subdued, and it's more blue and black.
To get the red, they have to buy the deluxe edition though. So, but the inside is red. But
yeah. No, it's nice.
Yeah, I do like impact.
It's a nice splash of passion.
Sure is. Listen, buddy, as normal, you and I could just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. But I think for the focus of this conversation, at least, we'll draw that one to an end. Of course, I love TJ's work, as I always have. We've been friends now since we had that first conversation on the Vision and Light, which was back in 2020. It must have been kind of early. So we're into our 3rd year. And
feels like 10.
It does feel like 10, maybe 15.
In a good way.
Yeah. I will say nothing. But yeah, of course, the reason I wanted to have TJ on the show this time was for people to get exposure to his work. And please click on the links below and go and check out Ebb and Flow and snatch yourself a copy, particularly in the pre-sale price when it's cheaper. So thank you very much, TJ, and we'll be talking again very, very soon.
Thank you. I appreciate you more than you know. Thank you.
I know.
I don't think you do.
All right, buddy.
But thank you.
Take care.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.